Hey, this is Jamie from Green River Ordnance. You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Thanks for checking out this recording on Lone Star Community Radio. This is Dick, the General Manager of Lone Star Community Radio, and I wanted to give you a quick reminder of what's going on with us for the month of September. A new show has been added to our lineup. The Good News with Ted Cox is going to be on Tuesdays from 1 to 3 p.m. during our Talk Block. And also joining the Talk Block is going to be Mornings with Lone Star. Every weekday from 10 to 11 a.m., Mornings with Lone Star will extend their normal programming from music into talk. That's right. Starting from now on, from 8 to 11 a.m., Mornings with Lone Star. First 2 hours, music, talk, fun. And then from 10 to 11, more nitty-gritty talk radio for you. Also extending their time slot is going to be our favorite Saturday morning show, Grit and Grace. They're going to be extending their hours from 8 to 10 a.m. every Saturday morning for you. Also, the last reminder is we still have plenty of talk slots available for those who want to be a talk show host and also volunteer DJs for music. If you're interested in those kind of things, please let the studio know at lscrstudios@gmail.com or call the station at the message line at 936-647-3776. Thanks again for checking out Lone Star Community Radio, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
And good afternoon. You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This is Ted Cox. I am the host of the Good News Show here on Lone Star Radio. You're listening to us on Conroe's own 104.5, 106.1, and if you're driving along on I-45, just north of Houston, as soon as you get landed, you'd be able to continue to stream the show on irlonestar.com. So again, this is the Good News Show. We try to spend a couple of hours each Thursday. The premise of the show has been, as we constructed it and conceived it, that we would take a break from being just bombarded with bad news and have some guests on and discuss some topics that remind us that there are some really good people doing extraordinary things in the community. We've talked about folks that have helped locally on River Oaks, and what started with just a few bologna sandwiches has turned into a full-blown service and everything from replacement of homes to tents. We've talked to folks that are concerned with sort of the least of us, which were foster kids, and how people can get involved. We've had folks that have produced movies that address a very sensitive issue of PTSD, and so we'll continue that. Today is going to be a really good and fun show. The guest who will join us at the bottom of the hour is one who went around to a number of shelters. Perhaps you caught him in his choir on YouTube or one of the local news stations as he went around and sang to different places that were really hurting, and how it just brightened their demeanor and just inspired them. And so we're going to hear his story. We're going to get to talk to him about what motivates him and what his passions are. I've exchanged a couple of texts even today of trying to talk him into maybe singing for us. So we'll see if we can talk him into that. So at the bottom of the hour, we will do what we typically do, which is to have a guest in to talk all about what they're doing, what drives them, and their inspirational work. You might have even caught him on Jimmy Fallon's show about a week and a half ago. So for the first part of the show, we're going to introduce a new segment called the Worldviews Roundup, where we'll take a look at a current event. And as many of you perhaps know, if you've listened over the last couple of weeks, in addition to being on the air each Thursday, I have another life, and that other life is being able to teach several different classes at different organizations. I'm an adjunct professor with Laterno, which is out of Longview. I teach at a homeschool co-op, and I also teach at Lone Star during their all program. It's the 50 and above, and I now reluctantly have to count myself a part of that. And so I have a really great opportunity to talk to a variety of people, including a range from high schoolers all the way up to retirees. And part of the class and part of the discussion has to do with worldviews. And worldviews are really very simply, it's the sum total basically of all of your experience and all of your knowledge and all of the things you read and consume in terms of information and your experience with your family and your churches and your jobs and so forth. And that begins to build the way that you see events and you interact with people. It determines basically how you think and how you process information. And so it's really interesting to be able to talk from a variety of backgrounds, the different worldviews. And some of them have been very pleasant and cordial conversations and very cordial classes. And some of them have been really heated debates. And so we'll take a look at some of these current events and try to understand, even if we disagree from the point of view, to try to understand what is their worldview, what is their point of view. The reason why I wanted to introduce this as a segment that we'll do from time to time is that it seems like one of the reasons why this show came about, which was just to simply remind people that there really is good news that you might not normally get on your newscast or your Facebook feed. But also we seem to have lost the ability to sit down and have rational conversations with people or even heated debates. But rather, we seem to be in a period of time where we're just standing on the other side of the street yelling at each other. And that really doesn't advance understanding. It doesn't advance anything other than just simply yelling. It doesn't change anybody's mind. It doesn't introduce civil discourse in sort of the arena of ideas. And it just is a downward spiral to nothing good. And so as I teach these classes, normally what I try to do is if you read something, if you read a book or you read something on theology or politics or even just a current events or history books, it's to try to go back and research who is the author and what was their worldview, what caused them to write in a certain way. Interestingly enough, one of the books or two of the books that we're talking about and reading right now have to do with two different worldviews about what man is, what mankind is. You have the Frankenstein novel and the Jekyll and Hyde novel. And the great debate between these two books is the monster that's inside us, is it truly inside us, or is it something outside that we could try to control? So it's interesting as we begin to look through this. There's a number of current events that we could undertake. We could take the kneeling at the NFL. We could certainly take anything that's currently just such a hot topic that seems to have people yelling at each other, and try to do that. But for today, I thought as we introduce this segment, we would just address and try to understand the point of view. Points of view from both sides of the recent Boy Scout announcement to be able to admit women, admit young girls, young women, because it actually starts in the Cub Scouts as young girls and then moves their way up through the teen years all the way to 18. That would ultimately give the girls now the ability to progress through the rankings and achieve an Eagle Scout. And so what brought that on, and what is the environment that's allowing this type of change to happen to an institution, or really kind of two institutions, because you have both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts that are getting close to about 100 years old, each organization. So what's causing this, and how can we understand it if we just read a news headline or a tweet at 140 characters or somebody else's point of view on Facebook, and we just see this announcement? We have a tendency to immediately jump to our conclusion and our point of view and our opinion, and then nothing else is considered. So let's dive in and start to look at what exactly is the decision. What was announced? I am going to read primarily. There were a number of news agencies that reported on this. So I'm taking mine. So if you wanted to look up and kind of track along or verify some of the things as we talk through this is going to be taken yesterday. It was dated October the 11th. It was filed on 6 p.m. And this is the PBS NewsHour reporting of the event. The title is, "The Boy Scouts Say They Will Now Admit Girls," and here's what it means. And so not only is the news going to be reported, they're also going to give kind of the ramifications of it. And again, I think this is part of what is contributing to our inability to have civil discourse anymore, is that that it is true what Mark Twain said so many years ago. In his case, of course, it was papers. He didn't have CNN and Fox News. He said, basically, if you don't read the paper, you're uninformed. If you do read the paper, you're misinformed. And so we only have a couple of choices. And it seems that despite the channel that you choose, whether it's a local channel who actually does a pretty still reasonable job at reporting just the news, or certainly the national channels, both CNN and Fox, it's rare that you just get the news. You really get an opinionized version of the news. And so here's what they report. It starts, the Boy Scouts Board of Directors said Wednesday that it would open certain programs up, including the path to the prestigious title Eagle Scout, which is the organization's highest rank. This mark, they go on to say, is a major shift from a century-old establishment that the Boy Scouts of America said the decision was an important evolution in how it meets its family's needs and their children's needs. But the move was previously sparked by criticism from the female-focused Girl Scouts, which is they had a very interesting response to this announcement, which happened just yesterday. So what sparked this? Well, there was a girl who made an attempt to join the Boy Scouts, and this was out of Manhattan. So this was up in the New York area. And she was 16 years old and petitioned the Boy Scouts to let her in to become an official member. And while it is true that there were certain girls that were able to be in certain of these Boy Scout events, none of them were actually formally members that could progress to an Eagle Scout. And so the reporting by the PBS is citing then a change.org petition. Okay, so if we're trying to know what is it that's the point of view that they're talking about, the petition, which you can find in change.org, starts off with this. I cannot change my gender to fit the Boy Scout standards, but the Boy Scouts can change their standards to include me. I am determined to be an Eagle Scout. It isn't just a hobby. It's an access to some of the best leadership training there is. According to the BSA, the Boy Scouts of America, over half of the astronauts involved in scouting, 16% or West Point, are Eagle Scouts. And it goes on to say that by being excluded from this, that there was an elimination of the ability to progress through, and therefore she was not going to be able to get some of the best leadership training that's out there. And so the petition, which was signed by about 8,900 as of the time of publishing, was accepted, and the Boy Scouts ended up changing their policy. So again, quoting, I cannot change my gender to fit the Boy Scout standards, but the Boy Scouts can change their standards to accommodate me. So we're gonna go to break as we just kind of read what this is, and as we come back, we'll try to analyze what some of this is and try to determine what's the environment that this is happening. What is it that's causing some of these types of positions to be held, so that petitions can be started and signed by a number of people to get this sort of change. We'll talk to you right after the break. Talk to you in a couple of minutes.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question, comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station on irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
And welcome back to the Good News Show with Ted Cox. We're continuing on our discussion in this opening segment of our show. It's kind of a worldviews roundup in which we're going to take current events that are just before us and kind of as I do in my classes is to try to understand the details of it, not just the headline, not just looking at the headline and make our own interpretation of what they think, but actually what are the folks saying so that we can be in a better position to have a conversation about it rather than just sitting on the other side of an issue and just yelling at each other. And so today we've chosen, since it was brand new, it just was announced yesterday, was that the Boy Scouts are now going to be able to, or have now announced as a result of a petition that was signed on change.org, have acquiesced to this pressure, this petition, and perhaps other pressure, because they do cite that over the summer they spent a few months in doing research about this. They've now said that they will begin to admit girls. And so now the Boy Scouts of America, who've been around since World War I, about 100 years, long thought of as a institution that upheld many of the virtues that we would count as American virtues, loyalty and bravery. I was a Boy Scout as I grew up. My son was a Cub Scout and ended up not going through the Boy Scouts. So I know what the training is, and I know what they're all about. So what has caused this? What is the purpose of signing this particular I guess it was on change.org. It was a petition. So I guess formally a petition, and kind of what's the environment of this? And of course, Jake is here in the studio with me, and so I've invited, as he wants to make statements, I'll make a couple of opening statements, and then invite him if he wants to join in the discussion. But it seems like this is the result of a number of things that we're also seeing, even today. And I was talking to the high schoolers, and they were saying that this is kind of the result of a generation, or perhaps even two generations, of a self-esteem kind of psychology-ruled environment that we live in. That is to say, everybody gets a trophy. Everybody gets a participation trophy, whether you're the best or not. Even with some of the NFL, it seems like that no one has ever told them no. They were celebrated athletes, and they went into the college, and people were fawning over them because these are the best of the best. They become the NFL. They've got millions of dollars. No one has ever told them no. And so now they are able to think that they perhaps are above the rules. In this case, though, I don't think it's that, although it could be that perhaps the gender neutrality, the gender fluidity, I am not born necessarily a certain way, a boy or a girl, but rather I can choose what it is as I identify. And so the breakdown between organizations that self-identify, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, now have a lesser moral ground to stand on, because if in fact you discriminate against someone for their gender, then you are thought of perhaps in a lesser sort of moral way. Because in the word that kept getting used in the PBS article was inclusiveness. We must include people. We must include people and not divide people, especially in things like the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, where we know that research has shown, and the Girl Scouts actually cite it to bolster their case, that having divisions between genders, boys and girls, who pursue different things, although ultimately there are awards that are given to both of them. The Girl Scout, about 5% they cite, achieve their highest award, called the Gold Award. About 5% of the Boy Scouts achieve the highest award, called the Eagle Scout. And there's been about 2 million Eagle Scouts that is cited by the Boy Scouts since 1912. And so the question then is, what's the point of view that this person and many of the signatories on the petition is coming from. Well, you can't exclude me because of my gender. But is that really true? Do organizations have the ability, if they're a private organization, to exclude people that don't meet the certain standards? And I would submit that in sort of the 2017 today, that in fact, fewer and fewer people, organizations have that claim, even if, for example, you wouldn't want teenage boys and teenage girls doing campouts. And so, anyway, so I don't know, Jake, if you have something that you want to add. I know I'm kind of throwing you. I've read this, so
I have not read this, and I'm going off of strictly my own personal opinion, being formed at real time, kind of as I hear this for the first time. I didn't know about this even before you walked in the studio today. So, my point of view or my opinion is that there's just. I can understand how there's certain young ladies who would maybe want to partake in what the Boy Scouts have to offer where they can't get those certain activities with Girl Scouts. And I again, not fully informed, so I don't know all the different programs that are offered by the Girl Scouts offered by the Boy Scouts that maybe the Girl Scouts would not offer. And I grew up with a mother who was a tomboy from day one, and so she was never a girly girl. She never had an easy bake oven. She always had a ball mitt and a ball, right. She was always outside playing with the boys, and she was never a Girl Scout. She was never a Boy Scout, or never tried to be a Boy Scout or anything like that, but she was one of the first young ladies to actually play in the state of Texas baseball. In a little league, in a small town, and just outside of Odessa. So I guess I can understand where there's just certain things that maybe the Girl Scouts don't offer, or some of these ladies may want to do, and so they would have to be in the Boy Scouts. My biggest question would be, where does this take the organizations? Do they maybe combine into one and let it kind of take the sex out of it, the gender out of it,
right.
and let the students choose what activities they want to partake in and which ones they don't. So if and I know this is probably a crude example, but if a boy wants to learn how to bake cupcakes and a girl wants to learn how to make a fire, they can do that.
Right.
So I don't know. It's interesting, and it's a very 2017 topic. Very 2017.
It really is, because I think especially over the last dozen or so years, there has been an increasing move to blur the lines between male and female. And especially with the introduction very recently of transgenderism and gender fluidity. And it seems like that by couching it as discrimination based on gender, that they are coming from a point of view that the other side may say has no validity. Men and women, boys and girls, are different.
Yeah.
I mean, you are different. And there are differences. And by differences, there are potentially also dangers in having young boys and young girls in so close proximity in places that, in which they're forced to be outside the realm, in some cases, of adult supervision as they're trying to just figure out. So it's just interesting that the point of view that they're coming from is, well, I can't change my gender. I want what you have. Therefore, you have to change to bend to my desires. And because the Girl Scouts, just one last thing, because you brought up a good point. The Girl Scouts said, wait a minute. We have all that.
So they do have all that.
Well, the Girl Scouts in their response said, in a written response to the Boy Scout, said, we have the leadership you're talking about. And so the claim that a young girl could only get the leadership, because it was leadership. It wasn't camping and it wasn't outdoor stuff. It was the leadership program you have at the Boy Scouts, I can only get from you. And you have to go, really?
Well, no, and I agree with you. I agree with you there. I'm sure the leadership program out of the Girl Scouts is just as strong as the Boy Scouts leadership program.
Well, and that's what they claim.
And that's why I'm very uneducated with this topic
Yeah.
because I just learned about it. So
Yeah, sorry
I
for
did,
throwing you in
no,
the
no,
deep water.
you're fine. You're fine. I can go off the fly. If the only thing comes down to leadership, then I can't understand it. If it came down, because I know if my mom was a young girl trying to do this, it wouldn't have anything to do with leadership. It had to be, I want to go play in the mud with the boys.
Right.
That's who she is. So I thought maybe it was something more along those lines. But when it comes down to strictly leadership, I'm sure both organizations have very equal opportunities for both genders.
Exactly. And your point is exactly well taken. And that's the reason why, as opposed to trying to speculate what the motivation is, I wanted to be able to go to the specific wording of the petition that was signed by 8,900 people and go, what is it that exactly that you're claiming? And the claim is, I can get leadership training that the Boy Scouts of America offer only in the Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah.
And the Girl Scouts are saying, whoa, that's not true. We have that as well. So you have to then wonder, although it's not cited in here, if you're looking at the method by which, the conduit by which it's flowing through, then you have to start asking different questions. For example, this was a petition on change.org. Well, what is change.org? Is change.org a neutral organization? Is it a right-leaning organization? Or is it a left-leaning organization? And it's not enough time to completely unpack that, but if you go to change.org and you look at the things that they advocate, you will pretty quickly notice that they are left or far left on many issues. And so you have to understand if her motivation is leadership, for which the Girl Scouts are claiming we got it in just the same amount as the Boy Scouts, then you have to say, okay, there's something else in play here. And what else is it that's in play, especially coming from the source? So again, this was just kind of a first shot at trying to unpack different.
We could go probably a whole hour on this too.
Well,
and
I wondered what can of worms I would be, because this is the first time we've done this in the show of saying, okay, what's the worldview of a current event, and how do we back our way into it so that we understand the other party?
Yeah.
So that we're not standing over here yelling at them, but we understand their point of view so that we could have a civil conversation and exchange the arena. We may walk away even more fervently disagreeing, but at least we've had a reasonable, rational conversation rather than left-wing nut, right-wing zealot. I mean, that gets us nowhere.
Well, and
gets us nowhere.
And I would just encourage all the listeners out there that, take these topics, these, hardball topics, and become informed. Don't just let the news tell you what to think. Don't just read what a newspaper says and go with that. Go do your research, and you become informed yourself and form your own opinion.
Yes.
And that way, when the time comes to have a discussion, it's truly a discussion, not a shouting match.
Exactly. So, I know we're actually a little over the bottom of the break hour. You're listening to the Good News program with Ted Cox. I can't wait to come back out of the break. I have got a special guest, and you are really going to be inspired by him. So we'll join you after the break. Talk to you in a couple of minutes.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Welcome back to the Good News program with Ted Cox. We are broadcasting from the heart of downtown Conroe on FM 104.5 and 106.1. And so if you're traveling along 45 and you're picking us up live, as soon as you get landed, you can also stream on irlonestar.com. Certainly after this, we usually post our interviews and our shows up on YouTube, and we have our podcast. And so I got to say, I have been communicating with our next guest for a couple of weeks, and I'm so excited to have him in studio. It's Marquise Taylor, and you're going to hear all about him. I was so heartened and I can see that you're broadcasting live. I was so heartened during the course of Harvey, you and Victoria and the rest of your choir brought such hope and inspiration to so many people within the shelters that you were going to. So before we get into all that, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
For sure. Hi, my name is Marquise Taylor, and I'm so excited to be here with Ted Cox on the good news.
Yeah, good news.
Good news. I'm so excited to be here. It's amazing what's going on in the city of Conroe. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you bet. Well, tell us a little bit about. We'll get into the singing, and we'll get into your background and what your passion is and what drives you. And I, for those who are listening, I think I've now got him talked into maybe singing a couple of songs for us. So perhaps let's see, we're at 37, maybe at the top of the 2:00 hour. So as we hit what normal song's about 3 minutes, give or take. So as we hit the 57 mark or 56 mark, I'll ask you to maybe sing us out to the top of the break.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Marquise. I'm from a small city called Lufkin, Texas.
Okay.
East Texas. We only have one high school.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very small.
Okay.
So I grew up there my whole life. I'm a PK kid. My dad is a preacher. My grandfather was a preacher. So I really didn't have a choice. I just didn't have a choice. And so I've been in the Conroe area for about 4 or 5 years. I was in the Woodlands before then, but I came here for ministry. My father-in-law had started a church years ago, and I came to be the youth pastor and the worship leader. And what was crazy is I actually came to do a concert, and I never went home. I literally left my apartment. I left my car and my clothes. I never went back home. It was a fresh start, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was a young 19-year-old teenager trying to figure out what is life,
Oh, wow.
And so I never left. And so my wife and I, we're married now, but we're friends. We're friends through high school.
Okay.
And so I never went home. And so I tried to discover, being a teenager, you don't know who you are. You don't know what you want to do.
Right.
And for years, I thought that, I'm just supposed to sing, and that's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And, until, developing that relationship with God, trying to figure out who I am and what does he call me to do, I felt like there was a preacher somewhere deep inside of me that I did not want. I'm like, no, I'm not a preacher. I'll sing, but I will not preach. That's not and I denied it for years.
Now, wait. If I recall correctly,
yes.
I think there was an Old Testament prophet, Moses, that said, I'm not a preacher.
Right.
I can't talk.
Right. I don't know how to speak. That's me. I'm like, Mom, no, I don't. That's not what you called me to do. That's for everybody else,
Okay.
And so after years of doing soul searching and finding out what God wanted for me, I found out, that's what I am. I'm not a singer that preaches. I'm a preacher that sings.
Okay.
And so I started developing this gift, and it's just been so surreal the way that God works, because you have your life planned out one way, and it goes totally somewhere else,
Right.
It's like, this is not what you called me to do. And so it's been my life, and I'm very confident in ministry. That's who I am. That's what I represent, and I'll never change. Ever.
Well, and so we haven't really talked about ministry stuff.
Sure.
So I'll take just 30 seconds. And of course, I'm a preacher too, which means 30 seconds is really like an hour.
Exactly. For preachers.
So anytime you hear finally,
right,
you're 30 minutes away.
You got
So I did not grow up in a Christian home.
Wow.
Now, we weren't antagonistic towards Korea. We were just ambivalent.
Sure.
Right? I grew up in South Carolina, similar, small town in South Carolina. Met and married a Texan, so therefore I live in Texas.
Right.
She actually did, as she said, hopefully she's not listening, but she'll corroborate all this, that she did 13 years in my neck of the woods, which was Atlanta, Georgia at the time. And I felt like you, God was calling me out of the secular world.
Right.
I had, like Solomon, I had let no pleasure go untested, whether it was wine or houses or whatever. And after having money and then losing it, I felt like there's got to be more to life than this.
Exactly.
So I applied, got into seminary. I have my degree from Dallas Seminary, and started preaching.
Sure.
Did two churches, both of them in the Asian community. One was Taiwan.
Wow.
And the other was Chinese. So I know what you're talking about. And mine's just the opposite. My singing is a joyful noise.
I gotcha.
I'm joyful.
Right.
Nobody else is
Nobody.
joyful. They run screaming for the door. But I felt like that like Paul,
Sure.
I wanted to know nothing among you but Jesus and Him crucified.
Yes, for
right?
sure.
So that's where it started for me. So I will say this as a preacher, people will go out humming your tunes long after they've forgotten what it is
You're
that
right.
I preached about. So your music ability, you probably have the ability to touch people through your preaching,
Right.
whether it's voice inflection or cadence,
Yes, sir.
that I would never have. So I stand in awe. So tell us then. So you grew up a preacher's kid, and a grandson of a preacher's kid.
Yes.
And so what was that? How did that transition happen between, I think I'm a singer, to wait a minute, there's something else
Sure.
going on. How did that happen? And did you pursue school? What happened? You went, okay, fine.
Sure.
I'm
You know
a
what's
preacher.
crazy? There's two elements here. First thing is relationship. I found out that I couldn't live off the relationship of my parents or my grandparents. And it's important
Oh, interesting.
for me as I got older that I found out who God was in my life. You know, a lot of times we live for God through other people or my grandparents did it, my mom did it, so let me do it. I wanted a reason. I was a very, very curious kid and teenager. I'm like, everybody's praising this God and I believe in him, but I need to know him for myself.
Okay.
And so when I started developing that relationship with myself and I started to study the Word of God, I found out that even in the Word of God, I had a passion not only for singing, but for people.
Okay.
And also the second element to that is that God will put people in your life that will confirm what's inside of you.
Yes.
And my father-in-law, this is crazy. My father-in-law, he told me, he says, Marquise, you're a singer. You're a great singer. And he's so straight up. It's so funny. He's country. Okay.
Right.
First of all, I'm in an interracial marriage. And my father-in-law, he was dipped. He had to be dipped in the African-American culture because he's so white that he's so funny.
Okay.
He comes to me, he says, Marquise, I know that you are a singer and you're a great singer, but I'm telling you, you are a preacher first. I'm like, what? No, I've been singing my whole life. No one's ever told me that. No, I'm not a preacher. He says, yes, you are. He says, I can feel it on you when you, he says, I mean, you're up there singing, but you're preaching while it's just like, I'm like, I don't see that. And so I just disregarded that for years until I started getting the Word of God for myself. And I started to develop that preacher. God started to develop that preacher inside of me as I started studying. I had a hunger for the Word of God. And then I realized that, like you said, there was something more.
Yeah.
I was hungry for something more. Singing is great. That's my gift.
Right.
But preaching is my passion.
Okay.
So it was twofold there, having a relationship with God for myself and then also having people around you that can develop what's inside of you.
Okay. Yeah, I know a good friend of mine gave me probably some of the best advice I ever got. In that advice, especially as I was getting into the ministerial part that I was doing, he said, you need people around you who aren't impressed with you.
Yes.
And so I went, hey, yeah, I'm married. And I'll come home and I went, boy, did you hear my sermon? She was like, that's great. Take out the trash.
I love it. I love it.
No,
That's
like,
right.
Yeah.
I live like that.
Yeah.
My wife she's the same way. She was like, listen, when you come home, we don't care nothing about your name. You still got to take out the trash. You still got to do this. And you do. You have to, because you know what? People has a way of building you up so big that you forget how you got where you are, And I think being humble and being submitted to God that's the best thing ever, And I'm still human. Right.
Right. Because every sort of thing in you wants to fight against.
Yes.
Look at me. And then you have to fight to go,
yeah,
look at him.
Exactly. That's good.
Yeah. So, I think we're at our mid-time break, Jake. Is that right? Are we coming into it? So we will take a quick break for just a minute or two, and we'll be back on the other side. You're listening to the Good News program with Ted Cox, and I look forward to talking with you in just a minute.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
And welcome back to the Good News program with Ted Cox. I have just a special guest in with me today, and we've exchanged a couple of things. And he wanted me to be able to talk a little bit about the generation that he is ministering to, both in song as well as preaching, and that's the millennial generation. So. Tell us a little bit about, because I'm a little bit older. I was just joking that one of the classes that I teach at Lone Star is for 50 and above, and I'm not exactly happy that I fall into that group. And I knew it was bad when I started to get AARP stuff. So tell us about the millennial generation and how you're connecting with them. And
Sure. You know what I think about this one? I hear so many things about the millennial generation that it's fascinating. And when it comes to ministry, when it comes to church, when it comes to God, when it comes to our world, we are a very hands-on generation. And so we don't want to just hear something. We want to be a part of change. You know, a lot of people, let's change this. No, how can we? Let's put our hands on it. And so we don't mind doing the things that are necessary to see the change come. So when it comes to millennial generation, I'm very passionate about it because we're very different, of course. I mean, we're very different. We're becoming business owners and entrepreneurs we're not even going to college, and they're millionaires, and we have social media.
That's true.
You know, we have so many things that are advancing our generation that we didn't have to do that like you guys did, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think there is a big gap between the generations.
Yes.
And I think it's a lack of communication. We don't really have a conversation
Yeah.
about who we are, why we do what we do, because we're different. We're weird. Yeah,
Right.
we're weird. Sometimes we got to align. That's
Right.
why we have you guys to help us, put in line.
No.
But as far as
I'm not
church,
sure how I like
right.
this, how this conversation's going.
No, but as far as
Because we invented electricity.
you did. We need it. Hey, we need it. I'm telling you. But we'll come with the crazy light bulbs and let's change it. Just crazy
And
stuff.
don't forget, we invented Pong. So
Right.
all your video games.
You
came
did
from
it.
my generation.
You got credit for it. You got credit for it. I love it. But as far as reaching these young people, this is my approach. Straight realness.
Interesting.
Real.
Right.
It has to be uncut. It has to be raw. It has to be real. Because
Right.
why would I help you and give you advice and give it to you the pretty version, and you go out in the world, hit you in the head, and you be like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It has to be real. It has to be authentic. It has to be a place of transparency. And that, to me, that's the secret to my ministry and who I am. I'm transparent.
Okay.
I have nothing to hide. I've fallen down many times. And it has nothing to do with your race, your color, your ethnicity, your background. I'm human. We're human.
Right.
And the biggest thing is that I'm transparent, and I don't mind sharing my story with other people, how I came over and how God is real in my life and how he's helped me. Right. And I think if we get to the point of where we're not trying to put up a facade and trying to be fake and try to put makeup on, I got to take, because now I must say this, our generation is notorious about having lavish lifestyles on social media.
Yes.
You know, right? We'll hashtag this, hashtag that. But behind all the hashtags, there's somebody that's hurting, that is dealing with suicide, depression, and that's where my heart is to get to the core of where we feel like we're being defeated. And so I think being transparent and being real and authentic really goes a long way with helping us.
So you mentioned a couple things that are certainly in my generation, when we had crank phones and
Sure.
did our laundry down by the river.
Wow.
So in the era of smartphones, and because how old are you?
I'm 29.
29. Oh, well, I guess you saw the cell phone come, or the smartphone come in. But many within the generation that you're appealing to has never known life without
it.
Facebook.
Yes.
And so from your perspective, talking about authenticity,
Yeah.
what do you think the challenge is by having what is generally called social media?
Yeah.
Which has, it seems, a tendency to cause us to be more removed from
Yes.
people. So do you find it more of a challenge to be able to connect with
It
people?
is.
Have people lost the ability to have a conversation?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes,
And so
I
how
agree.
do you
You know what's
overcome
funny?
some
You
of
said that social media, but a lot of us are not social at all.
It's Andy.
I mean, and you know what? We don't know how to communicate.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty too, because sometimes you go out, even with my wife, sometimes you go out and we can put up all the excuses in the world, but sometimes we go out, the first thing that we do, we pull out a cell phone. And our conversation is through this.
Right.
We don't make eye contact.
Right.
The way to communicate is a text message, or I heard you, or I didn't hear you, because I'm so busy, in my phone. And so I think there has to be a balance. Social media isn't a curse. It could be when you don't put your priorities, and I think that that's why a lot of us or a lot of young people, they don't know how to do like the simple stuff. They don't know how to do a proper interview because they don't look in the face. They don't know how to shake hands. They miss all this stuff because social media has just drained us of all. We don't have to communicate anymore. We just Snapchat, Kick, Instagram, all this other stuff, Facebook, and we don't have to really have a conversation. I can be where I am right now and talk to somebody in China and they never see my face, Right. So I think communication has got to be effective. We have to get back to whether we call it old school or we have to get back to the shake hands, look in the eye, have a real good, decent conversation.
I hate to jump in and interrupt, but to expand on that, do you think there's any room within the ministry side of things to utilize social media?
Yes.
And I understand that there's the downsides of losing connect and the face-to-face aspect.
Yeah.
And that's definitely an issue and something that our generation needs to improve on. But is there also a way that we can use social media to not just spread the word of God and the gospel, but also, just kind of creating a more united church scene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that was crazy. That's why I do something called, like you talked about my videos earlier, the daily dose of Jesus.
Daily dose, that's right.
That's why I do it, because everybody don't go to church.
Yeah, right.
For whatever reason. It's not my job to nitpick to say why you don't go. But if I can give somebody a word in 30 minutes that will help them all week long, that's utilizing social media for something good. Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing is that we can say, I hear a lot of people say, I don't get on social media because it's bad. Well, make something good out of it,
But social media in and of itself is morally neutral.
It is. You're right. You're right.
So
I agree.
It's a blank slate that we can make our own message as positive or as negative as we want to make it.
We can accelerate sin or we can accelerate redemption.
I love that.
So
I love it.
So I think we're inching up on 54, Jake. Or are we?
Yeah, we're right about there, 30 seconds shy. If you want to warm up those pipes.
We can talk you into maybe singing us out to the top of the hour.
Sure.
Okay.
So I was hearing this song. I heard it this morning on the radio, and I do a little bit of it. The words mean so much. It says this: "Who is like the Lord in all the earth? Matchless love and beauty, endless worth. Nothing in this world could satisfy. Jesus, you're the cup that won't run dry. You're the treasure of my heart and of my soul. In my weakness, you are merciful. Your presence is heaven to me. Oh, your presence is heaven to me."
Woo!
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So we're approaching the top of the hour break. Again, you're listening to the Good News program with Ted Cox on Conroe's On Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5, 106.1. And as you're driving along and you want to pick us back up when you get landed, you can stream us on irlonestar.com. After the top of the hour break, we'll come back and we'll continue our discussion and maybe again talk him into maybe one more song. Talk to you on the other side of the break.
Remember to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on your computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. Lone Star Community Radio, broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
And welcome back to the Good News Show with Ted Cox. You're listening to us. We're broadcasting out of Conroe, the lovely metropolitan city of Conroe, Texas. 104.5, 106.1 on the FM dial. If you are picking us up as you're scooting down 45 or going to and from picking up your kids from school, as you get landed back in your home, you can pick us back up and stream live on irlonestar.com. Or you can also, come to think of it, I haven't mentioned it yet, you can look us up and friend us on Facebook at Good News Program. Each week, we post the podcast and the video on YouTube and on our Facebook page. So in a couple of days, you'll see the links to this show. If you've missed part of it and you want to hear some great singing and some good conversation with my guest, you can pick that back up. So where we last left off was kind of the passion and connecting with millennials and sort of the aspects like technology that make it a little bit difficult, and how people have to conduct themselves with greater transparency. I'll just kind of pick that back up. It seems like that most of the folks that I talk to in that generation, called the millennials, I can't remember what mine's called. X, Y, Z. I can't remember, but old, decrepit,
what it is.
curmudgeon.
I can.
Funny.
Curmudgeon, maybe. It seems like that the era that we're currently in is more of a prove it era. Right?
Yes.
So it is informed by technology. It's informed by science. It's informed by different aspects that say, basically, unless I can observe it or measure it or repeat it, I don't believe it.
Right.
So do you find that having sort of an influence of modern psychology and modern science, is that an impediment to you being able to reach the millennial generation? Or have you found a way to sort of integrate faith and the presentation of the Bible and the gospel? Have you been able to integrate that in? How do you address that?
You know what? This is how I live my life, honestly. I believe that the best way to show forth all that we speak about, like our faith, is to live it. Not so much. My job isn't to make you believe how I believe.
Right.
My job isn't to make people. Since I ran into somebody the other day that says, "Listen, I don't believe in your God." We had an amazing conversation because I wanted to know what they believed in and what their beliefs were. But they come back to me. This is what's crazy. They come back to me and they said, "You have so much joy. Where did you get this joy from?" I said, "Now this is my interest in."
Right.
That to me was it. That's all I needed. Like,
Right.
because I wasn't gonna bulldoze my way in. But
Right.
I don't think it affects, because my life speaks of the goodness of God and what He has done for me. And I just tell people, just keep looking at me, just keep watching, not a spotlight, but just keep watching what God is doing through me and how He's using me. Then you'll be able to tell there's something more to Him than just being happy-go-lucky. Because there's some days I'm not happy. There's some days where I don't want to go to church. Some days I don't want to get on Facebook Live and tell people it's going to be okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I'm human.
Right.
But there is something deeper. There's always something more, and that something more is Jesus. And I tell people all the time, we are the only Jesus that some people will ever see.
Right.
And so my life is a testimony, and so I don't rely on, and I don't get worried about other stuff than that can interfere or stop or hinder the growth process in someone else, when I understand that not only is He real, but He's real to me, and He's real in my life based on the things that I've been through. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
So
so that causes people to go, what do you have?
Yeah.
And potentially the corollary, how can I get it?
Yes.
Right?
That's good.
So that's in a true Peter sense, always be prepared to answer for the hope that's within you.
That's right.
And then you have the opportunity. So is that what you primarily do? You mentioned in our communication that you are vice president of a nonprofit, Others Outreach. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I love it because this is another side of ministry that is just not inside of a church building.
Okay.
But Others Outreach Missions is a mobile church. We are the church. It's an acronym. My father-in-law is the founder of Others.
Okay.
And it's an acronym, and it stands for Often the Hurting Everyone Rarely Sees.
Wow.
Often
okay, say
the
that
hurting,
again?
often the hurting everyone rarely sees.
Okay.
Others. That's
Okay,
what it stands
got
for.
it.
And so it is like I said,
Yeah.
we're living in a generation now where not only millennials, but people in general, we have these big smiles, and our social media is amazing, and how you doing? I'm blessed and I'm good. And truth is, we're not always good, you know? And so this was birthed out of being passionate for people, but Others has really, really been effective during the hurricane because we've been able to help families. I'm talking about middle-class families, upper-class families that lost everything. They cannot, they haven't been working in a month, and so they need food. And so we're able to knock on their doors. We hand-delivered this stuff. Knock on their doors, give them food, give them diapers, and whatever it was. So Others Outreach Missions is a blessing in so many ways because it is the hands and feet of Jesus.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, and that kind of goes into what we were going to talk about before, because where I discovered you on the local news and then subsequently on Facebook.
Sure.
Is you and your friend, and perhaps several friends.
Yes.
I remember Victoria in
Yes.
particular. You went around after Harvey to these shelters.
Yes, sir.
And you really turned people around. You
Wow.
could see it. Now it was probably more obvious to you because you were live.
Right.
But we could see it on watching the videos.
Yeah.
In which, from the time that you started to the time that you ended, those people were radically different.
Wow.
So tell us a little bit about, and that picked it up on a video. I mean, so I can only imagine. So tell us about some of those stories and kind of what prompted you to go do that.
Yeah,
and those
it's
kind of
amazing
things.
that you said that because of course, when you're passionate about something. So first of all, the storm comes or whatever. That Monday night, I start praying, and I have ADHD. I cannot just stay focused sometimes, So
Yeah.
I'm sitting at home and I'm praying. I'm like, God, what can I do to help these people?
Right.
I can't work. I can't go outside. Like I'm trapped inside this house. I'm about to go crazy. So what can I do? And so I prayed. In my relationship, I prayed to God, and God, He speaks. He responds.
Right.
And so it was almost immediate. It was crazy. He gave me shelter worship, and I'm like, what in the world is shelter worship? And
Okay.
I felt like through my prayer, they said, you're going to go to these shelters and you're going to lift up the spirits of these people. Just worship.
Right.
Lift my name. I'm like, these people don't want to hear worship. They lost everything. It's the last thing they want to hear, right?
Yeah.
Then I started thinking, how am I going to get in a shelter?
Right.
Because a lot of these shelters are strict. They're not going to let you come in, especially talking about Jesus. They're not letting you in here.
Right.
So I got a contact number. This is crazy. I got a contact number. I actually text the lady that was over the shelter. I said, listen, my name is Marquise Taylor. You do not know me, and what I'm about to tell you is crazy. God told me to come do shelter worship. I didn't even get to explain to her what it was. I said,
Right.
can I come tomorrow? Me and a group of friends want to live up the spirits of these people that have lost everything.
Right.
She says, be here tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Right.
I said, huh? So we get to the shelter.
No. Let me explain.
Right.
I have a speech prepared.
Exactly. I'm like, I didn't know it was going to go that smoothly. I just obey God. I'm like, okay, God, this has to be you because, prior to that, every shelter that I called said no.
Oh, really?
They told me no because, it's a great idea, but the reason why we can't do it is because it's religious. And a lot of these people are in schools, and I may lose my job. And I said, okay, it's understandable. I've just been obedient. I'm like, God, maybe this is not what you told me to do.
Right.
But this one here, and it was here locally in Conroe, so I called.
Yes.
And I get on the phone. I immediately call my friend Victoria. We've been friends over 15 years.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask
Victoria
how you
and
know
I,
each other.
oh man, this is my
Yeah.
sister. We've
Okay.
been friends, and so I didn't even hesitate like who to call. When Victoria sings "Heaven Comes Down," it's just a rap,
Yeah.
And so I called her, and she was like, "I'm game." So
Yeah.
we gathered the rest of the crew. We meet at the shelter, and me and her start having a conversation. She was like,
Right.
"Okay, what are we gonna do?" I said, "We're gonna walk in there and we're gonna sing." She says, "Do they know that?" I said, "No, they don't even know we're coming in here. We're just gonna sing impromptu." I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay." So we go and we sing, and you can see the countenance of the people.
It was remarkable.
It literally just changed.
Yeah.
It shifted.
My wife and I, when we watched that, we said, we need to know these people.
Wow.
I mean, we need to know these people. Now, at the time, the radio show was just starting. And of course, I wanted to have you on.
Sure.
This is going to be a little bit of a funny thing, going back to what we just talked about with technology.
Sure.
Prior to this meeting, you and I never met.
Right.
Even further than that, we never talked.
Right.
So it's funny that social media, while we talked about inauthenticity and we talked about isolation, it brought a couple of people together who
Yes.
have the same goal in life.
Yes.
But do it very differently. You
Right.
obviously considerably more talent, which Bob will tell you. So again, we could tell just on a video like that these people were dramatically different than from when you ended from when you began. Now, did you for just the minute or two we have before break?
Sure.
So you do this, you're discovered, your video goes viral as
Right.
it. And so Jimmy Fallon calls, or somebody would. So how did that happen?
Nuts. Jimmy Fallon actually wasn't our first call. It was crazy. Ellen called first. And
Now, did you go on her show?
we didn't do Ellen.
Okay, because
there was a lot of
Jimmy Fallon was the only one I knew about.
Right. There was a lot. There was a lot of stuff, but the first big call, major call, was Ellen, and we had a lot of stuff that this was all new to us.
Yeah.
And we were just
Yeah.
trying to see I mean, we were just like going
We're
crazy.
a group of friends.
Right.
I assumed at that point that you and Victoria were part of the same church.
And
so
people
forth and
thought
so on.
it was like, we're not a choir.
Well,
we
that's
are not
what
a
I
choir.
thought.
Right. Everybody thought we're not a group, and we're still not a group. I mean, we didn't want to use this platform and say, okay, let's become a group because now we're getting national. No. We're passionate individuals that love God, love music, and we're going to keep it that way. And so Ellen was our first call, but there was a lot of stuff that didn't work out there.
Okay.
And so between then we did probably 40 to 50 interviews. I mean, and Victoria did her own interviews. I did my own interviews. It was just nuts. I couldn't even leave my house. It was just nuts. And then all of a sudden, Jimmy Fallon, the producer of Jimmy Fallon, called us and says, hey, we want you guys to open up. Jimmy Fallon's coming back, and we want you guys to open up. We're like, is this a joke? is this real?
Right.
You know, and so we went to New York, and it was church.
Okay.
We had church.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Now, what was the song? I'm not going to ask you to sing now. I want to sing at the bottom of the hour. But what was the song? Was it Friend? It was
Lean on Me.
Lean on Me. That's what it was. Yes.
We did Lean on Me.
Lean on Me.
And it was so amazing. It was so fascinating because we got to sing with the Roots. They are stupid talented.
So was it just you and Victoria?
No, so it was
because I
they
thought
brought
all
the
of that.
whole so the choir
that was you.
The
your
whole
friends.
choir the choir that was behind us, they lived in New York. It was 10 of us that flew down to New York that sung in the Lone Star Convention Center here in Conroe. They wanted everybody that was in that video to open up for Jimmy Fallon. So they flew everybody down.
Okay.
It was amazing.
Wait, so did Jimmy Fallon come here to do the show?
No, we went to New York.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay,
Did y'all fly first class?
Look at what he's interested in.
We didn't fly first.
That would have been so cool if he flew you first class.
We did not but hey, listen, the hospitality
That was great
and
insight,
everything,
Jake.
right? Everything else was first class. It was amazing. Like the show was just
Good question, by the way.
Yeah, no, it was great. The experience was first class for sure.
That was amazing to watch. So, well, we're going to go to a quick break. We are just having a wonderful conversation. This is such a blessing. So in another minute, we will be back and continue our discussion. You're listening to Ted Cox here on the Good News program on Conroe's own Lone Star Community Radio. Talk to you in a few.
A Lone Star Community Radio is ready for the summer. If you or anyone you know is looking for summer internship opportunities, a Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to grab the mic and be on the air. A Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world all year round. Be an on-air personality, talk show producer, or YouTube, TV, podcast editor. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776.
And welcome back to the Good News program with Ted Cox. You're listening to us on Conroe's own 104.5, 106.1. Marquise is in here with us, Marquise Taylor, and what a special person. If you are listening and you're wondering who is this, have I heard of him or have I seen him? The answer is most likely yes. You might have caught him on Jimmy Fallon. I guess it's been a week now, maybe a little more than a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he and his friends, Victoria was his other friends, Victoria White, right? Is her last name?
Yes.
And they went to different, at least one. How many different shelters did you go to? At least the one that you mentioned.
Yeah, and we went to another one here in Conroe as well.
Okay.
Yes.
So a couple of shelters right after Harvey. And as we've talked about on a couple of shows now, there are people that literally have lost everything.
Yeah.
And to the point where they didn't have diapers or shoes or
Right.
socks or any of the just basic comforts. And they went into these shelters where people were hurting and lifted their spirits through song. And I told him that I would have loved to have been there live, but even the video, the faces and the countenance, as you've already said, changed pretty dramatically. So we talked a little bit about the Others Outreach Ministry that you have, our Others Outreach Mission specifically. And for those of you who are listening, you know our Facebook page is the Good News program, and we will make links from here. We'll talk about how you can get involved with the ministry and how to reach Marquise as we go through this segment. But I will also post links to his social media and so forth at the conclusion of the show. And if you missed any part of the show, you'll be able to download the podcast and watch it on YouTube in just a couple of days. So as we pick up the conversation again, tell us a little bit about, maybe start back with for the ministry, for the people who didn't hear it, how people can get involved, and then maybe how they can participate by contacting you or the missions organization through social media.
Sure. I think, first of all, before all that, the best way that you can be involved is being sensitive to the needs of others, like your next door neighbor, just checking on them every now and then, or the bin of the grocery. You never know. I found out, how you go in a grocery store, and you sometimes you feel like, wonder if I should speak to them or not.
Right.
That is so important that you really adhere to that feeling that you feel, and just say, hey, are you okay? Or buying someone's coffee in the Starbucks line. Just being all around sensitive. I don't do what I do for a stage or a platform. When you serve, God will provide that. When your motive is right and when your motive is pure. So I think you should start at a place of being sensitive to God and just checking on people, loving on people. We need that because our world is chaotic.
It seems
crazy.
like we're just at each other's throats. We just
all
had
the
on
time.
just exactly your point. Just south of here and just east of the Woodlands is a street called River Oaks Drive.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we had some folks in last week who were serving the people of not only that street, River Oaks Drive, just south of us, just west of the east of the Woodlands, excuse me, and the 5th Ward. So they serve both of them. And the woman who was on here, her name was Christine, said, I felt like I should do something.
Yeah.
And you know what her first something was, much like what you said, just this shelter ministry. So she said, I made a few bologna sandwiches, and she took them down there.
Yeah.
When she got down there, she realized there's way more need.
Yeah.
And so the next round was 3,000 bologna sandwiches, which is now tents and cots and cooking. Because people, even now, even though we look outside and it's still summer, for sure.
Right.
But it's sunny and the water has receded and the vast majority of us have returned to normalcy. There's still neighbors who don't have a place to live.
Exactly.
Still. They're living in tents and in cots. So your point is well taken. Even if you begin with just a small amount of serving, what you will probably discover is there's a greater need than what you're first discovering. So
that's true. I mean, and my deal is about us as humans. Everybody can serve.
Yes.
You don't have to be at a certain level. Everybody. I mean, if you just drive downtown, you'll see somebody holding a sign. Give them 25 cents. A lot of people say, I don't want to give because I don't know what they're going to do with the money. That's not your job. Serve, love. Allow the love of God to overtake you and give. I mean, give them your milkshake. I was eating Chick-fil-A a while back, and I was so starved. I was hungry. I was going into another meeting, and I saw a gentleman that had a sign up, and my first thought was like, he was dressed well. I'm like, he doesn't need anything,
right?
But you know what I did? I rolled down my window and I gave him my Chick-fil-A sandwich. And he looked at me and he says, I want money. I don't want this. This is what he said. He says, I want money. He says, I don't want this. I said, but you have a sign that says you want food. He says, well, I'll take it. And so I drove and I looked in the rearview mirror. I was driving by. He ate the whole thing. Like he ate, I mean, it was gone. I'm like, you needed something, man. Just stuff like that. And I think a lot of times a lot of people don't want to serve because they don't want to be rejected. But it's not about us.
That's interesting.
It's not about us.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
We don't want to serve. And it's not that we don't have a heart to. We don't like rejection.
Right.
So if I offer my services and you don't want it, then I feel like I'm taking it personal. But it's not.
Yeah.
But some people are. I mean, we have a sense of pride. I mean, people are human, whether they're poor or rich. It doesn't matter. I don't want to give to them because they may reject me. But it's not about you.
Right.
It's about God. It's about Jesus. It's about showing the love of God. So people need to get involved by serving. By knocking on people's doors, give that extra bologna sandwich or Chick-fil-A
it was amazing, the story.
That's amazing to me.
Well, and to expand on the fact that everyone can serve, I would also say everyone can hurt and everyone can feel and everyone has pain. So therefore, everyone needs a little help here and there. Therefore, everybody should serve.
That's true. I agree.
So. Yeah, and you raise a good point that sometimes the motivation for not serving is rejection.
Yeah.
And I think you're right on that. In talking to people in some of their less guarded moments, some people even go so far to say it's a little more callous than that.
Yeah.
They may make the determination, as you've already sort of alluded to, I don't know what they're going to do with the money.
Yes.
If I give them money, maybe they'll go to the liquor store or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I've had even a few people, again, in less guarded moments, say, I just don't think they deserve it. And you think, how can you think that way?
You know what? You said that.
And you go, how can you think
There's-
that you're making a moral, in effect, judgment call, that you have something that somebody else standing on the street corner,
Yeah.
regardless of motivation,
Exactly.
you're making the call on their behalf that they don't deserve something that you might give them, whether it's money or Chick-fil-A or whatever
Right.
happens. So I'm thinking, I'm too far removed from that now
Yeah.
to know. I don't know how you get there in your thoughts.
And that's
So-
the mentality of some people. And you know what I
Yeah.
think about on that when people have that mentality or even say they don't deserve it. I think about we don't deserve grace.
Well, exactly.
We don't
Exactly.
deserve mercy, but
Exactly.
God give it to us anyway. You know, we don't
Yeah.
deserve any of it. So who are we to look at somebody else and say you don't deserve it because I don't know what you're going to do with it?
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and again, we in my worldviews class in the high school group, we just read through Jonah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a story for you right there.
And Jonah, of course,
Yes.
you need to go to Nineveh and proclaim. And he said, no. And you realize that really what he was saying, if you read in chapter 4, I knew what you were going to do.
Exactly.
You were going to be merciful, and they didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, that is a scary
Wow.
position. What callousness must you
Yeah.
have in your heart
Sure.
to say, I have something I can give. And most of the time, if we're sitting at a red light or whatever, the $1 or $2 or $5 or whatever is something we will never miss.
Right.
From our rich abundant, we would never miss it. And yet we make some moral call
Right.
or moral judgment
True.
in which we prevent ourselves from sharing with others or blessing others. So
I agree.
anyway, so your ministry, others outreach missions, and you also wanted to talk a little bit about how people can serve. We talked about serving in general.
Sure.
Is there anything that people can do to help or support your ministry? Is there any way that you would like people to participate with you?
Well, you know what I tell people? I'm a fisherman.
Okay.
That's exactly what I am. I'm a fisherman, and the word of God is a bait. You know, I genuinely love people, and my heart is to proclaim the word of God all over this world. I don't want to do anything else.
Okay.
I'm 29 years old. I don't want to do anything else but proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. If it's not about Jesus, I don't want no part of it.
Okay.
Just,
All right.
just simple.
So you have your and I'm sorry if I misheard you. So please correct what I'm about to
Okay,
say.
sure.
So are you a pastor of a church?
No, not yet. I'm not.
Okay. So I wasn't sure if people would be able to come and participate within your
Sure.
church or give either support or whatever to your
Sure.
so that you can continue to do
I
the
get
job
it.
that you're doing.
I
So-
travel. I do a lot of traveling. I do have a church home. My church home is in Humble.
Okay.
I'm a part of Lighthouse. Pastor Keon Henderson is my pastor.
Okay.
I feel so bad because I haven't been there. I don't know how long because I've been on the road. So I haven't been in church. But I'm not a pastor yet. I spend time. I travel. I get to proclaim the love of Jesus all over to youth, young adults. And
Okay.
so if people want to support or show, I definitely you can follow me on social media. I guess that's the best way. You know.
Well, I
I'm
didn't know
always
if
on
there were some immediate needs that
Sure.
that you've been invited to go certain places, and you would love to have somebody come alongside and support the travel expenses and
Yeah,
you know,
that'd
those,
be great, too,
those
because
sorts of
it
things.
it
And I
costs
know,
money to
I
run
can
a
already
ministry.
tell. We've asked the question a couple
Sure.
times, and you are really uncomfortable. And
Because,
I
you
don't
know,
want to push.
I get it.
I
No,
don't want
you
to
know
push
why?
the
Because
issue.
I
So.
hate. You know what? This is the truth. I told somebody the other day. I hate because you have to have money to run ministry.
Of course.
But I just don't like the negative connotation that it gets
Yeah.
sometimes because another preacher wants money. No, that's why I have a job. But
All
it
right.
does take money to run ministry. So if people want to support, I'm definitely not going to close that door.
Okay.
At all.
Gotcha. Well, we'll link to it. So
Yes, for sure.
We're just a couple of minutes away from the break at the bottom. So if I could impose on you one more time.
Oh, you're gonna
to sing towards the bottom.
Sure.
You have about 2 minutes, and
Okay.
that'll take us to the bottom of the break. And then we'll come back, have you for just a few more minutes
Yes.
for any closing thoughts, and
Perfect.
And that'll do it.
So I'm gonna do this song that I actually wrote. I wrote this a few years ago. I've never really done anything with it, but it was a mission.
Okay.
But I wrote it. So this is the words. I think it's so fitting for this time. It starts off like this. We have a mission to see our cities change. And there is a revival that's waiting to begin. So love the unlovable, reach the unreachable, and build those up whose past has torn them down. Shake the unshakable and touch the untouchable, and build those up whose past has torn them. Oh, 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 love. Oh, 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 love.
All right. Well, we'll be right back after the bottom of the hour break, and we'll spend the last few minutes with Marquise. And
Yes, sir.
And when any final thoughts? You're listening to the Good News program with Ted Cox. Talk to you in a couple of minutes.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
And welcome back. We have just a few more minutes with Marquise, who has just been a special guest with his songs and with some of his original work and so forth. So in the remaining minutes, we wanted to make sure that if any of you who are listening or ultimately will pull this down either in a podcast in a later date or looking on YouTube, is how to get in touch with him. He certainly has been traveling quite a lot, and so why don't you kind of share again with us on how people might be able to get in touch with you, whether it's Facebook or otherwise.
Sure.
If someone would like to have you come, either sing or preach or otherwise any of the talks that we do, how would people get in touch with you?
Sure. So there is actually a booking number that people can contact, which is super easy. The number is 936-827-3228. I'm going to say it one more time. It's 936-827-3228. And also through, of course, social media, my Facebook page, or my personal page, Marquise Taylor. And it's MarQuist, and then Taylor is Taylor. It's the best way that you can get in contact with me, and someone will get back with you ASAP.
Okay. All right. So, and I will also post that on our Facebook page,
Yes.
Which is the Good News program on Facebook. We will also perhaps tweet it out and the other methods by which we communicate. But again, one more time, it's 936-827-3228, or you can look him up on Facebook. So we've already talked a little bit about your past,
Sure.
your discovery, semi-reluctantly, that you were both a preacher and a singer. So we talked a little bit about reaching the millennial group,
Sure.
for which you are a part of, proudly so, it seems.
Right.
And so what do you think? And I know that plans are just about impossible to play out.
Right.
If God has you to do other things, then God's going to change it. But if you were to lay out the next couple of years, what would you like to see happen?
Well, man, that's a good question. That's a good question. And you know what? I'm one of them people that, you have your life plan out in your head and it's totally just like,
Right.
like went out the window. You know what? I really, really, really would like to see the gap that's between generations and people close.
Okay.
Through communication, I think everything starts at a conversation,
Yeah.
I think everything, if we're going to solve a problem, if we're going to help build something or make something better, that we must have a conversation first.
Right.
And so the gap that has people segregate, like now we're dealing with all of this craziness stuff. There's prejudice and all this tension. It's been nuts.
Yeah. And if you're listening to the radio, you would be hard to know that we are of different color.
Sure.
We are bonded, of course, by our belief system in Christ.
Yes.
But that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I know it's something that a lot of people shy away from.
Yeah, for sure. They do.
Because it seems that with whatever declaration people try to make, whether it's either helpful or true,
Right.
that the word racist it seems to be thrown around with great frequency. And in many cases, it's misapplied.
Yeah, very much so.
Because a statement of truth is not necessarily, I think, because I'm white,
Right.
I am in any way superior to you. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm curious about that.
Sure.
So how would that happen? I know we start with a conversation,
Right.
but it seems so difficult now.
Yeah.
We can't even get to the table
We
to
can't
have the conversation.
And you know what?
So how do we do that?
That's a heartbeat
And
of
how
mine.
questions are hard.
No, that's good. No, that's
Why questions are easy.
right. No,
Right.
that's a heartbeat of mine. One, because when I'm in an interracial marriage, and so
Yes.
I've had time to study and look. This is one thing that I had a conversation with my wife.
Okay. How long have you been married?
I've been married 5 years.
Oh, you-
as of October the 6th. 5 years. It's
yes.
amazing. Married my best
Newbies.
friend. Right?
I know.
Exactly.
You're still puppies.
Exactly, right? But it's amazing. And one of the conversations that we've had
Yes.
and we have with other couples and other people is that let's first acknowledge that we're different. I told my wife, you like cauliflower, I like collard greens. We're different.
Yeah.
But now we're together.
Well, I'm from the South, so I love
it's-
collard
right.
greens.
Oh God, it's so amazing. I try to stay away from them, but they're great. But let's acknowledge we are different. Let's
Right.
not put on a facade like, oh, we're
Right.
the same. We're not the same.
Right.
And that's what makes our world go around, that we're
Right.
different. Even in our difference, there has to still be a unity.
Right.
Even
Right.
in us we don't have to agree, we don't have to like. There's certain things that she eat that I'll never taste. I just don't,
Yeah,
we're
well,
different.
that's a really interesting point, because it seems like that really what society, and that's a vague, nebulous
Right.
term, but culture and society wants to slam us apart and say we're the
Yes,
same.
Exactly. No, we're not.
And so that's a great question. What's wrong with saying that we're different?
There's nothing. You know what? And that's why God created
Yeah.
personalities. If
Yeah.
everybody was the same, we would be a boring world.
Yeah.
We're the same thing, do the same thing. We would get nothing accomplished. I think
Right.
it is amazing that we are different. It is, and I don't understand how there's some people we get it confused or we get it misconstrued that because I'm this color, I come from this background, that I'm less than, or I feel
Right.
superior, and it has nothing to do with that. I
Right.
tell people all the time that your character should speak for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It has
Right.
nothing to do with where you are, where you're from. And I believe that if we can have a conversation,
Right.
like this is why, and be honest, like I said, be honest, open, and transparent
Right.
without getting in a big fight, and everybody's not prejudiced, and everybody's not against you, and everybody's not
Right.
bashing your race. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
Let's get to a race of unity. You
Right.
know, let's if we're gonna race, let's get to a race of unity, not bash each other. But I think it starts at a conversation with first saying, "Hey, we're different, and that's okay."
Right. Yeah, I know. I think you're exactly right. I don't know how to get there because there seems like there's so much animosity, and so we're bringing to the table now so much fear of what somebody else is thinking of us that we can hardly get to the table. It is interesting.
Yeah, it's true.
That in my worldviews class, just last week we listened to Dr. Martin Luther King's speech.
Wow.
That I Have a Dream speech.
Yes.
And the question that I posed to the class, are we living up to his ideal?
Whew, that's a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because the basis now, and it is a phenomenal speech
Right.
in and of itself. The brevity of it, the different aspects that he's brought into it, whether it's the Constitution or the old spiritual songs
Right.
or the illusion of the check that hasn't been that is returned non-sufficient funds, but certainly the crescendo of the speech is, I have a dream that one day we will judge others by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin.
Color of their skin, yeah.
And it's interesting to me that speech is how many years? 40 years, give or take. 40 years. I should know that. But 40 years, and it almost feels like 40 years after that speech, we're worse off today than we
I
were
agree.
in some aspects.
Yeah,
now,
for sure.
certainly some of the laws and some of the things have since been alleviated.
Yeah.
And so the separation and segregation is
Sure.
really not as prevalent, although still existing in some places. So I'll ask you this question, which is, I admit in the upfront, that is an unfair question. But it seems like while the laws have changed with segregation, it seems that our churches are still segregated
Oh, yes.
tremendously.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so again, I have African American friends
Sure.
that I went to seminary with.
Yeah.
One in the Woodlands,
Yes.
who's Impact Church.
Yes.
Right?
Familiar.
Roche is a friend of mine, and we went to the same seminary together. And,
Yeah.
and I asked them that same question.
Right.
After we part ways, after this wonderful lunch with this wonderful conversation, I go back to largely a white church. You're going back to largely a black church. How do we bridge this?
That is the best question. You know why?
I don't have it's largely rhetorical. I don't know what the answer is.
It's amazing.
So-
It's a good question. You know why? Because it puts the spotlight on the problem. It makes you realize what's really going on. And I will tell you this. I want you to think about it.
Yeah.
If you go to what separates us from a Caucasian church and an all African American church is one thing: the worship.
I agree.
Watch this.
I agree.
We're preaching the same message. It's the
Right.
worship. It's
Yeah.
the way that we worship. A lot of African American churches are very demonstrative in their worship. When you go to a Caucasian church, a more contemporary church,
it's very
they're
reserved.
very reserved.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's the culture of the church.
Right.
But that's what also divides us.
I think you're right.
And we say, gospel isn't a genre of music. Gospel is the good news. And so if I'm
true.
preaching the gospel,
That's
it doesn't matter
true.
if it comes from a black church or a white church.
Right.
So we shouldn't be segregated. But what segregates us is our worship. What we don't understand is that if we bring that contemporary and that flair and that fire and we put it together, that's
Right.
when true revival starts. I don't think unity is when everybody is in the same room singing
Right.
the same thing. I think real unity is when cultures
Yeah.
are in the same room saying the same thing.
I love
and
it.
until we get there, we're going to be forever segregated.
Do
Right.
you think that's a Southern thing? I don't know how much. I've never
a good
been
question.
really anywhere to
Sure.
a church outside of the South, but
Yeah.
is that more of a Southern thing than
I don't think so.
no?
Well, it's
It may be more prevalent
Yeah.
because I think you're right, because you would think of black churches
Yeah.
having gospel music, as you've
Yes.
already.
Well, they've
right?
got a lot of
And-
roots already
Right,
in
right,
the
right,
South.
for
So.
sure.
Yeah, and I think it was in many cases a refuge away from culture. I think it was a shunning, perhaps, of the predominant white culture, perhaps backed them, if you will, into churches. But I don't think so. I think you're right, though. I think style.
Yeah, it's the style.
Style represent, and I will say this in full disclosure. My wife and I, as I was coming out of seminary, said, "What would we dream if we could have any church? What
Yeah.
would it be?"
Yeah.
And it was black gospel music with Puritan preaching.
I love it.
Right? True to the word,
Love
in
it.
a true Spurgeon,
I
Jonathan
love
Edwards kind of way. But just because really, seriously, think about it. If you know Christ and you are saved,
Yeah.
what other reaction is there than emotional?
Yeah. True. Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I hadn't really thought all the way through, but it's not message necessarily. It's style.
It's the style.
Yeah.
It's the style, and I know everybody has a preference, but at the end of the day, if we're going, I would love to see contemporary churches and gospel churches merge and have a service. I think that'd be glorious. I mean, I think it'd be amazing. You're talking about revival?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, we're going to take our last break. I think I'm going to ask Marquise that one last time, maybe at 53, I guess we'll have one more song.
Okay.
So we'll have just a couple of minutes to chat, and we'll play us out at the end of the show with a song. You're listening to the Good News program with Ted Cox. Talk to you in a couple of minutes.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out irlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776 with your question. Get seen on TV or YouTube and heard on our podcast, FM, and internet radio. Sponsor your local radio station with Lone Star Community Radio.
And welcome back to the Good News program. We are in our final segment, and we have talked Marquise into staying on the last couple of minutes just to wrap up a few thoughts, because I thought that the end of the conversation that we were having is one that is probably a little controversial, maybe a little uncomfortable, but it's fun to have because, again, much like where we started the program, unless we know where each other's point of view is and what really separates us. Now we can begin to dream a little bit and think a little bit and plan a little bit and go, okay, what would it look like to have a more emotional, demonstrative worship session, and at the same time be true in the preaching of the gospel? And so, any last thoughts? You're welcome to have any last thoughts.
You know what's amazing? You said, what would it look like? It'll look like heaven. Because that's what heaven's going to look like, right?
I think so.
It's going to be every type of person there. And so I think if we're going to go to heaven, we need to get used to being with each other down on earth.
Right.
Singing together, worshiping together, and not being so, because my style is not like your style, I'm going to dismiss you and say that's not, because a lot of times if your worship doesn't look like my worship, then your worship doesn't look authentic.
Right.
And it's not true. We just have a different way. We have a different style. Some people are demonstrative. Some people worship, they kneel. Some people, they sit in their seat. Some cry. Some are very, very, it just depends on the person. But at the end of the day, embracing everybody. Because you know what? I use this example. I have 2 other brothers. We have the same father, but not one of us have the same relationship. So do I look at my other brothers and say, that's not your father?
Interesting. Yeah.
Because my older brother have a relationship with the father. That's his father. He doesn't talk to him like I talk to my father. My younger brother has a relationship with our father.
Right.
He doesn't talk to our father like I do. So do I dismiss and say, that's not your father? No.
Right.
Everybody has a different relationship. And so when we learn to embrace that we're all different,
right,
and we're all serving the same creator, and it doesn't matter how it come across, as long as it's authentic, as long as it's real, as long as Jesus is in the center, then you should be good.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask this question, and this is an easier question than the one I just asked. So going back in your study of the Word,
yes,
did Jesus ever subdivide anybody into any groups?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. So why do we?
Exactly. Everybody.
Why do we?
Yeah, no.
So and again, I know that we're just getting to know one another. So you mentioned being in an interracial marriage.
Yes.
Did that change any of your friendships? The people that you had friends, either your wife's friends or your friends, as you came together, were dating and going through the courting and engagement and marriage. Did you lose any friends?
Sure,
or
I did.
Did people? How was judgment, if you will?
I've always been a very, very outspoken person, very bold, and just
that's a shock.
I've just always been. I did lose friends. I've had conversations with people that thought I should only date my race.
Right.
And,
yeah.
I think you should stay with your race because that's how you're black and you should be with a black woman. My response was, well, I don't agree with that because there are black people that are not with their same race, and so maybe you should try what I'm trying. I'm like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I don't limit myself to a race, and it doesn't mean that I believe African American women are beautiful.
Yeah.
That's all I've dated.
Right.
But God had for my forever partner, my wife, my friend. She just happened to be Caucasian. It has nothing to do with her color.
Right.
That's the one that God chose for me. We were friends. It didn't just work. This relationship bloomed. And I didn't think it was going to work because we were so different.
Right.
We were so
right.
different. I'm like, this is not going to work.
Yeah, because cauliflower and collards.
I'm like, this is not going to work.
Right.
It has nothing. I'm not prejudiced. I just didn't think it was going to work.
Right.
Because
there's
so
a lot
different.
of pressure on you.
Right. A whole lot. And I
Right.
I had to just steal away and get everybody's opinions out of our life, and this is something that we had to make a decision on. And of course, it costs a lot, but I would, if I had to go through it again, I would.
So, and now that you've journeyed together for a few years,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
and your ministry certainly appears to be on the upswing in a major way. Are you beginning to see how and why God put you together in terms of her help and support of you?
Oh, geez.
Therefore, enabling you to do what you feel God is. I mean, are you seeing that, or what does that look like?
I see it. I experienced it. I taste it. Without my wife, Macy, I would not be who I am because one, she's very detailed. I'm not.
Okay.
She keeps up with my schedule. I don't.
Right.
I mean, simple stuff like that.
Yeah.
And most of all, she covers me. You know how it is being a preacher traveling the road. You have to be covered. There's a lot of things out there that tries to distract you.
Yes.
And what I don't see, she does see. She's my backbone. She watches out for me. We'll get in the car and she'll tell me, she says, listen, watch out for this or do. I mean, there's just that detail stuff. And I have to have that. And every powerful anointed person has to have somebody around them that that don't mind telling them the truth. And then at the end of the day, she knows how to be a protector. She knows how to be my administrator. But at the end of the day, she's my wife.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so that's what I love, that we're friends through this also. This is a journey that I couldn't have, there's no other woman in this world that could accommodate me or help me like her.
Right.
And so even before we got married, she played that role, and now we're in this thing for the long haul.
Yeah.
Any plan for kids?
We get that question all the time.
Or you usually are saying, give me grandkids, right?
Yeah.
Listen, if I had $1 for everything, I promise you I'll be rich right now. Especially, she's the only child, so her parents want grandkids, and we want kids. And I just scratched my head. I'm like, how in the world are we going to manage a kid, especially now through all this chaos? We do want kids, so I'm going to say yes. We're going to, yeah, for sure. I don't want too many, maybe 2 at the max, but that's about it.
Okay. Now is she on with 2? On board with 2, or is this going to get you in trouble when you get home?
No, not at all. We talked about this. We can write a book on this. She's the only child, so she doesn't want a lot of kids.
Okay.
And I come from a huge family.
Okay.
My mom it was 17 of them.
Right.
And so, and I could not. So just 2.
Okay.
Because I hear your kids act like you.
Oh yeah. See, I don't. Want...
That'd be an energetic household.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's they're going to be preaching to the cats and the squirrels and
all night long. For sure.
And eating some weird combination of collards and cauliflower. This I could just see. I can see that happening. So
I love it.
Well, we are about to bring this group of conversations and thoughts and so forth to a close on this Thursday of the Good News Show. We've got just a minute or two, so I want to thank Marquise for coming in and sharing with us and telling us all about his ministry and the adventure to Jimmy Fallon's show and the responding that he did for the call to going. I think you're also, for everyone listening, next Thursday we're going to have 2 guests in. Both of them are going to be talking about foster care in different aspects that people who are considering foster and orphan adoption. So we're going to be talking about those types of aspects, what the organizations provide, how you can get involved. If you feel like you're led towards fostering some kids that really desperately need it or adopting, you're going to know everything about how to do that. So again, you're listening to the Good News program. We'll be back next week at our regularly scheduled programming time of 1:00. And so as we exit the program and as we end the program, we're going to ask Marquise to come in and sing us out to the break. And God bless you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take us out.
So here's a song I know everyone knows, but this is a prayer of mine. It simply says, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. So open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you, 'cause we want to see you. Thank you, man.
Thanks for checking out this podcast of Lone Star Community Radio, Montgomery County's community radio station. If you enjoyed this recording, make sure to check out our past shows online at irlonestar.com or their respective video or podcast formats on YouTube, Google Play, or iTunes. If you have any questions regarding the show, either it being about sponsorships or questions for the host, contact the station manager at dick@irlonestar.com or call the station at 936-647-3776. This show was recorded in downtown Conroe, Texas at the Lone Star Community Radio Studios, and Lone Star Community Radio reserves all rights to this recording and images.